Clink. Hey guys, welcome to Security and Brews Chat / Tech and Brews Chat number 17. Dennis, I guess it's the last official security only one. So
and a prime number.
There you go. Great to have you on. So guys, again, my name is Nathan. This is Dennis Underwood. He is the CEO of Cyber Crucible. Short story, trying to take a long story short. Dennis started slinging some code and software out of the dorm room, got picked up by the Army, then eventually the DoD for cybersecurity, and then now he is handling about 3 to 4 different businesses, one of which we're going to be talking about today, Cyber Crucible. So Dennis, welcome to the show, man. Glad to have you on.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Dennis, I know I gave a very rough summary of your history and how you kind of got into doing what you do. But I mean, again, like all great stories, I feel like start in the dorm room with, tinkering around with something to make ends meet and it turned into something awesome. So what's up with that? Kind of tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, what ended up happening was, I guess this showing my age a little bit, but around the first IT crunch, and I was trying to pay my way through college, and then realized I was interviewing with a lot of people that had just been laid off, unfortunately. Realized that I needed a way to have the flexibility and the revenue earning to keep going strong against people much more senior than me. Of course, 20-year-old me with a lot of confidence, maybe a little bit overconfident, and so I opened my first business actually, and it was good, and then that led to greater things. I ended up graduating with no debt and with a master's degree eventually. No debt, a house, a wife, a kid on the way. So that's pretty good for a poor kid from Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I guess the Cyber Crucible origin story was I was doing a lot of research when I was in grad school, in addition to other, of course, me working and everything, and realized that I already knew I had a knack for security and a knack for finding hackers, and I took it upon myself to see if I could break this supposedly unbreakable, unsolvable malware at the time. Of course, that's ancient history as far as cyber is concerned when it changes week to week, right? But I found this, kind of Independence Day cascading failure for the malware, that it would destroy the botnet globally. Unfortunately, one of the academic researchers emailed out details of my work. And the hackers were on this, the malware authors were on this email alias, and they did a really good job of patching. I would argue I was impressed even, 15 years later, 20 years later, of their ability to patch their systems and get this new software upgrade out overnight. If you would challenge any one of your listeners, or any one of our customers, hey, I need you to roll out a new version of this enterprise-grade software globally within 24 hours, they'd laugh, right?
Yeah.
These guys pulled it off. So my vulnerability was great in a lab, but didn't work anymore, But it got me thinking, what happens if I had a lot more computing power and I could really fine-tune this and hone this? The idea percolated, kept on, kind of brewing in the background, right? And then eventually I said, I'm going to do this, and the cloud gives you seemingly limitless compute power. Of course, things are a lot faster and better now, and there's a lot more internet bandwidth and stuff like that. So I said, let's do this. Look for a patent out there. Didn't see a patent while I was doing R&D. Went ahead and my team and I filed the patent. It got awarded here in the U.S. It's working its way through different markets now, and Japan was very exciting because I don't read Japanese and none of my friends do. So something was patented, I'm sure. And I'm sure it was a very good patent.
Okay, so and just I know we kind of had the chance to chat before this official recording, but as far as the actual patent goes, I mean, it's in network security, like a patent for that, kind of works alongside SIMs and stuff. And I mean, I know that you and I kind of talked about that, but I mean, for the sake of, layman's terms, can you explain kind of what that did, but also like how you built that?
Yeah, I mean, the premise for the product was, honestly, I looked at my team and I said, we're all working, 68 hours a week. trying to analyze alerts, trying to find hackers. We could easily double that and start working like, New York City lawyers. I said, our wives and families already are missing us, and we can't possibly scale fast enough to meet enough experts to bring on our team. I said, our job right now should be to automate ourselves out of a job. And even if we go partially, that's a huge win in an industry which, honestly, we all have a hard time finding good people, let alone senior experts, right? So that's how it started. And we looked at where the biggest pain point we had in our careers. And it was actually, we realized that all of these so-called zero-day attacks, in terms of malware campaigns that haven't really been discovered a lot or talked about a lot, all had some kind of alerting going on. So we realized that, I always call them the 100,000 maniacs who run security operations, right, that are finding IP addresses that are bad or malware or whatever. They're doing a pretty good job of finding behaviors. Not every product does 100%, of course, but we're all drowning in alerts, and the hackers are in the alerts, which is a good story, right, as long as we don't tune them out. So I said, well, the real challenge is that we need to take our team of like 10 and make it a team, act like a team of 100,000, and which there's not 100,000 people, locally that we can even use, right? So, so I said, we need to automate the analysis, all of that work done to deep dive on every alert. And that's where we focused. And what we've ended up doing is a little bit like Pandora's box, where you can take an alert or 10,000, put them through our cloud analytics, apply a whole bunch of compute power. It's like putting your OxyClean in the laundry, right? And out comes this great reporting showing everything the attacker is doing. It's the hacker's view of what's going on. Then the challenge became, well, okay, now we can show all of our customers, what real attack tradecraft looks like. And then no one really knew what to do with it, right? So now it's like, okay, and now we got to start breaking it down to show them this is why this piece of information is important. When you're going from an alert to here's your stolen phone call or your text message, or here's the 17 files that were just taken, that's a big game changer for the right people. And so we wanted to make sure that we were able to use a variety of analytics, even after our analytics, to expose the hacker data, but to say, okay, how do we make sense of this? And now that you're Mongo, actually, I look forward to a second or third podcast to describe why and how we chose MongoDB for that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, like that's so interesting, because I think so very often, like, what you're describing within the network analytics space and kind of dovetailing into the SIM space, a lot of people just automatically assume that, oh, there's no space in between, like there's no blue ocean and white space left. And the reality is that there's a lot of space open. You just have to have the scale and computing power to do that. So that's definitely super interesting. I think one thing that I'm curious about, you kind of let off mentioning Mongo at the end. Why? I mean, like, obviously we can save this conversation for another time, but why Mongo and not a SQL option or a relational database option for what you did? That's
a great question. And part of inventing is making sure Rome burns over and over and over. Sorry, Italians, right? But what happened was that we had a really hard time. If you can imagine that the hackers don't all get together and agree on a data specification. I know it's hard to believe, but they all speak a little bit different language with their malware. And so we had to figure out a way to have a whole bunch of data that a lot of great stuff is in there, but we had to bin it into behaviors or buckets that maybe the IT director really just wants to know about what machine names and usernames. The lawyers, all they care about many times is what data was lost, if anything. What records were stolen. And so for us, we had to take a whole bunch of data that was structured in its own way. That was structured, just every piece of malware is a little bit different. And then map those behaviors that were specific to those malware families to actual behaviors that mean something for the business. Because one of the main roles we realized was we have to be the connectors between cybersecurity, very, very advanced kind of technology, to business risk analysis and business, budget lines, stuff the boardroom is really concerned about. And so MongoDB was great for that, because what we found was that a lot of the data is repetitive, and a lot of the data is needs to be summarized in ways that give the leadership a very quick snapshot. And MongoDB did a great job of that, whereas SQL had some difficulty where our number of tables kept expanding exponentially. But using MongoDB and using the NoSQL method of organizing our data, we can have a very hierarchical structure to show that these 10 behaviors all lead to the attacker stealing things. And we could easily roll that up inside the MongoDB analytics.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I do agree. Maybe a deep dive we missed at some point.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to turn this whole thing into like a MongoDB pitch, but I just think I think it's really interesting how, at the end of the day, you and your team set out to say, hey, we work in cybersecurity, and we don't want to be a SOC operating at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Let's find a way to scale the crap out of this. And then you look beyond just the security aspect and say, well, how can we scale these vast amounts of totally disparate, unstructured and structured data, and compile in a way in which not only we can understand and scale it, but we can also present it to the board and do that in a very just formatted fashion. So that's really interesting for sure.
I love whenever I go to give we'll find a prospect, and then the first thing the person says sometimes is, I'm not a security guy, you might not like me looking at this. And those are my best customers, because I love them, watching, because if I can't make the breach legal counsel understand what I'm doing and get value out of what we're doing, then I have failed, honestly, right? Because our whole job is, as we've seen in recent podcasts, our job is to enable business leadership, not confuse them. And so I love seeing the ability of our analytics after all the fancy security stuff's done, but just to translate the information. Really, it's to translate the data into intelligence, into business intelligence. That's really the game.
100%. Well, you brushed a really interesting topic, Dennis. This is obviously, it's nothing new, right? The whole conversation of, CISO security, just in general, IT security in the boardroom. Obviously you and I understand, and we've seen it very closely, that a lot of times security is given the kids' table when it comes to the Thanksgiving feast of decisions to be made in the boardroom. And it's led to a reactionary response rather than a proactive or taking an initiative in terms of, bolstering and upping the security within an organization. So what's been your experience with that, and how do you see like a best option of getting out of that route of thinking?
Yeah, that's a great question. I really, I was watching some, I guess they weren't really podcasts back then. I was going to briefings by people that were in risk management, and it made me realize that security is just one leg of the risk management kind of stool. It's one section of variables, and our ability to, as security professionals, our ability to either communicate or not communicate that in a manner that is useful and easily consumable and understandable and quantifiable by the people who are looking at other risk management verticals. That inability to communicate, I think, is what hurts us the most. We kind of shoot ourselves in the leg by being too technical, right? And I'm guilty of that as well, right? When you're busy reversing in some malware and you're really in the weeds, and then in the next 5 minutes you're somehow supposed to brief this guy who has an MBA, and you're and it's a total pivot in careers, and so I think that is our biggest it's our biggest challenge, is the communication barrier, and it's also our biggest opportunity because I think as our language continues to mature, and as our abilities, including Cyber Crucible, continues to mature and allow security leaders to speak the language of the boardroom, so to speak, I think that's going to open up a lot of doors for us, in the future. And we're all, we see the traction on LinkedIn and on various podcasts like yourselves, right, where we're realizing this as a community, right, and we're getting better at it all the time. Just keep getting better.
Right, for sure. And I think something that again, that you kind of introduced, in response to talking about the boardroom and how security fits into the picture. How does your team, and when you're communicating to other security teams and their boards and doing consulting, things like that, what does it look like to, because the age-old question is how do you balance the grassroots and fundamentals of security, void of any kind of security solutions, so I mean maybe someone just looking up niche frameworks, they're tackling the CIS top 20 or going through that, and then so they're trying to answer those questions with resources of internal side. But how do you balance the grassroots side of that with frameworks, with looking at like the now thousands and thousands and thousands of security solutions, even including yours? Like how do you strike the balance between not going full in on the geeking out on tools, but also like not saying like screw security vendors in a sense,
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. So the first thing I would say was that before we started on Cyber Crucible, we actually looked for some kind of tool out there. I looked at it and I said, okay, out of these 5,000 security vendors, surely someone has been tackling this and has something better than what's out there that I just haven't heard of yet. And we looked around, and that's where we went from there to realizing we need to look at a patent. Maybe MIT, is sitting on a patent that would solve all of our problems, and I couldn't find anything there either. So I said, well, I guess it's time once again roll up our sleeves and get to work, right? So I think that as the CISOs mature in their language, what I'm really excited to see is as, of course, there's a variety of great leadership that's already doing a great job of communicating to the board. What I'm really looking forward to, though, is seeing which products now can enable the CISO to answer the questions they need for the board. And I feel like if they can't or if they don't, that's a great way to filter out some of this noise, right? To say, this is a niche feature that isn't really enabling me to go in, to the CIO's office, at budget cycle time and get more budget, or to really knock down a variable in risk management for the risk management team, the CRO or whatever, whomever is managing that organization. So that seems to be, to me, even when I do consulting engagements, which we all try to operate as a trusted source. And we do our best to be the advocate for every one of our customers, whether it's consulting engagement or product sale. And we try to always frame our assessments based on, even if it's a matter of, hey, you got to start from the grassroots, like we really need to get this cleaned up and provide a baseline before we even talk about product, right? I always make sure that whatever we're positioning and advocating or explaining the good, the bad, the ugly, like every product has, right? That we say, well, this is how it's going to help you on your risk assessment or your risk management program. And that seems to go a long way.
Right. Well, I think that's interesting too, is because like so many businesses, I mean, like, let's just imagine we're not even talking about the Fortune 1000, right? I mean, they can definitely have the budget to dive down deeper into more of the niche solutions. But I think it's interesting how you bring up, it's like, hey, like if said solution, if XYZ solution comes up and says, hey, Dennis, I have this solution which can analyze, components XYZ of your risk management level. And you're like, dude, XYZ isn't even part of my risk profile. Like, I mean, like, yes, it's somewhere in there, but like, I'm not even done with these top 3 ones right here. It's like, why do you matter? So I think that's such a good point, because it's like, look, the stuff that really matters, where it's generating data and reports that can translate into business value, not just like technical value that works within a vacuum, is going to float to the top. So I think that's a really, really good point. Well, yeah, I mean, Dennis, as far as everything goes, we've talked a lot about, everything from the boardroom to your product to like how you built it, reasons why the back ends, look different and doing what you do. Just kind of to cap things off, when it comes to, you within your current businesses, whether it be Cyber Crucible or some of the other consultancy, more services side things you're doing right now, are there any big like current projects you have going on right now that you are like looking at applying some of the stuff we're talking about, or you can use as an example?
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple things going on right now. Of course, we don't talk about all of them, right? But
yeah.
I should say, and you'll probably cut this, and that's perfectly fine. Like whenever I see like someone else's marketing team like steal some of our content, and I'm like, it makes me sad because we're an innovation culture company,
Right.
and some other companies I see, I'm like, they're also innovation culture companies, and they're doing some great things. Yeah, and then I'm like, does your boss know that you aren't innovating, that you're borrowing? And it's flattery will get you everywhere, right?
Yeah, imitation is the best flattery. Yeah,
yeah, and I'm like, well, that's great, but if you were my marketing person, I'd be upset, But regardless, so you can cut that out. That was just me being snarky.
Whatever, dude. That's fun.
But yeah, in terms of new products, so we for our new projects, obviously we have 4 products now. We did each of those things because we realized that, like you were talking about the grassroots, we had to remove people from everyone trying to be an expert on everything. And we felt the best way to do that was to apply that, Fortune 1000 kind of mindset, and make it available to a much wider audience. And the only way you can do that is by a generational improvement in automation. So that's where that whole mindset came from. Mm-hmm. In terms of integrations, we have Carbon Black. We now work with Carbon Black, which is a great. They've been great so far to work with, and I really look forward to exploring that relationship more. Over the summer, it's good timing as any for a business sense to say how Baltimore is having some troubles with ransomware. They just happen to be the latest. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
We originally ignored ransomware actually a little bit because I said, well, okay, so they're encrypting, Doris's in accounting's laptop or Steve in sales, and I'm really interested in the APT attacks that are going after the data centers, but it's become such an issue that now we took one of our new products and we said, hey, what happens when we pivot our attention towards ransomware? Mm-hmm. And the R&D actually came back and we said, this is a really cool capability against ransomware. So I'm actually pivoting a lot of resources towards that this summer. And we're hoping for a quarter 3, quarter 4 release of a tool that has some pretty awesome capabilities that will protect people and save them after ransomware attacks.
Okay, nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
I love how situationally that happened. You're like, oh, we don't usually do that. It was like, oh, I guess we can. All right.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of the problem is it's very in your face. We've seen where clients have been infected, and then of course you read about how they got breached, and then the hacker on the way out just kind of threw some ransomware down. Mm-hmm. So we were more concerned about the breach than the laptops that got lost. But a little bit older me, looking back to a couple years younger than me, and I'm sure 10 years older than 10 years from now, look back and say, wow, I really should have tackled ransomware first. But but that's part of being an innovator, right?
There you go.
So yeah, I think it's going to be very exciting when we release that tool, and it's going to really change the way things are done for our customers.
That's awesome. Good to go. Well, Dennis, is there a preferred way that people can find you or get in touch with you? Obviously, do not connect and sell with Dennis. But for actual conversations, Dennis, is there a way that people can get in touch with you? How can they find you?
Yeah, if they want to go on our website and just schedule a phone call or an email, that's fine. And I'll be glad to have a chat with anyone. Sometimes, my sales guy will fill in for me. Matt's awesome, and he also is really great at getting to the point very quickly. Like unlike our 30-minute webcast so far, right? So it's the coffee, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we'll be glad to reach out immediately and have a really great, engaging conversation. And we feel that we're onto something really big here. Our customers are happy, and so far we've really demonstrated a lot of success. And so we're happy to empower more people to have a really great risk management program through Cyber Crucible.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, Dennis, thanks again for the time. Guys, really appreciate you coming in for Tech and Brews Chat number 17. We'll have another one coming again next week. See you later. Have a good one.
Thanks a lot, Nathan.